in this lesson, we'll take a look at using projection to paint part of our texture. So we're not just constrained to using the stamps and stencils, but we can actually use existing photographs as kind of a basis to paint through texture. Now notice I've gone ahead and painted a texture for the eyes. All you have to do for that is to select the eye geometry, and then when you start painting, you'll create a diffuse texture just like you did with the body, and then you can start to paint. I've just painted kind of a simple yellow iris and a black pupil, and then added a little bit of detail here to kind of break up the eye. So pretty simple, just in a single map. But let's say for the body we want to use some sort of photograph that we've taken. So to do that, we're going to go up here to the image browser. That's where we're going to be able to see all of our pictures. So once in here, you can navigate to whatever folder you want to use, wherever your images happen to be located. In this case, we'll navigate to our project files in the referenced files folder, and you'll see that I've included a couple of stone kind of textures that you can see right in here. Okay, so you can see what that looks like, and then there's one here as well. And so to be able to use these, all we have to do is take one of these and send it over. But before we do, let's kind of set things up. So we've got our body. Let's create a new paint layer, and we'll call this rock layer. We'll make it another diffuse layer. Okay, I can go ahead and drag it up to the top if I want to. And now I want to use the projection brush, and then we're going to go back to our image browser, take our image, and then we're going to send it over as a stencil. So we'll hit this little button to send it over, and then we'll jump back, and here you can see it's kind of overlaid on top of our creature, and you can see that there's some values in here. You can take the visibility down a little bit if you want to move this around. So I'm just using the Alt key to move my model just as normal, but if I want to use move the stencil around, I can use the S key, and then if I middle mouse, I can rotate it. I'm sorry, that's left mouse button. Excuse me. Middle mouse is to move it around, and right mouse to scale it. Okay, so I can come in here and put it on a particular part of my model, and let's kind of move it into position here. Get a bigger brush, and you can see I can begin to actually paint that detail onto the mesh. So it's projecting it through to add it to the mesh. And we can sort of rotate around a little bit, put it back into a different position, and begin painting along here. So if you wanted to, you could cover sort of the entire model with this detail, and just remember it's on a paint layer, so we'll be able to use our blend modes and our opacity to change this. So if you want it to be in particular areas, maybe just kind of along the back, then you can come in here and add this along the back of our creature just by moving the combination of the model around and then also moving the stencil. You can see when you get to an edge, it'll actually show that edge unless you have tiling turned on. And so we'll go ahead and just real quickly paint through this. So, you know, if you had a character's face that you've built and you sculpted, and you had a human picture of someone that you wanted to add, you could do that, project through onto them, onto that geometry this way. Or you can use just one element of something to create something completely different. In this case, we're using a picture of some stone to create part of a creature's texture, body texture. And so, you know, you could use your pressure sensitivity to come in and say, up here, I'll make it a little bit lighter, coming in across the face, kind of make it a little bit lighter, coming in around here, kind of lighten things up just by not pressing quite as hard. Okay, so I'm going to go ahead and sort of fill this guy in a little bit. We'll come back here in just a second. So now, once we've got this guy covered in our texture, we can turn off our stencil. There's a stencil, turn it off, and there you can see the result. He doesn't really look too happy about it. So what we want to do is kind of blend this back in with the rest of the texture. And what we'll get is kind of all this variation, we'll get that detail in there as part of our skin through that rock texture. So we can try different things. Probably just changing the visibility won't really get us there, although it doesn't look that bad actually taking it down to maybe 30%. You can also play with multiply if you want to kind of darken things up a little bit. That actually doesn't look too bad. You can try screen, which will really kind of lighten things up, and then you can take the visibility of that down. Overlay, I think, is a good one because it gets that detail, but it doesn't really change the contrast too much. So I'm going to choose overlay, and I'm going to take the opacity down. And you can kind of see what that looks like with and without. So you can see just it adds a lot of cool variation that would be difficult to get otherwise. Okay, you get a lot of variation just from nature, just from that image, and just by adding it on there. So we can play around with the visibility of that. And so feel free to experiment with some other images. I've included 2 different stone textures, but use tree bark, animal skin texture, photographs of a lot of different things in nature will actually work really well for creating this sort of creature skin, and adding it as one of the elements, enables you to kind of layer all this detail on top of each other to get the result that you want. Okay, so that's using projection with an image. Remember to get the image, send it over as a stencil, and then you can use it in your projection. Now, once you've got all of your paint layers in here, you can leave them all separate. And again, just as with sculpt layers, though, you can flatten everything down, merging it, all the visible layers together into one diffuse layer. Okay, once you've got that finalized. So up to this point, we've been painting only the color. Everything that we've been painting is in our diffuse channel. So in the next lesson, let's take a look at how we can paint different aspects of our material. So we can paint in some specularity, or give some of his body a little bit of a glow, kind of a subsurfacey kind of an effect. So we'll go ahead and take a look at painting different texture channels in the next lesson.